So thanks once again for joining this session today. If you don't know me, I'm Gemma Finlay-Gray. I'm one of the Strategic Relationship Managers at Active Sussex, and I have a remit around equality, diversity and inclusion. So I head up the Sussex This Girl Can network alongside my colleagues Carrie Smith, sorry, and Nick Shalell, who you'll meet today as well. So as I said, try and keep your cameras off if possible. Use the chat function if you want to ask any questions, or use the hand raise function. So we've got a lot to pack into today's session, and I'm really excited. It's going to be a fantastic session, I think. So I'm going to move straight on to the context and purpose of today before welcoming Hannah from Sports Marketing Surveys to talk us through their new report, Women's Sporting Journeys. And we'll also hear some of our fantastic ambassadors and champions who are on the call today, and we've got some videos from. So just a bit of context for anyone who's not been to one of our This Girl Can forums yet or has joined the network. It is really nice to see some new faces, so hello. We've been supporting the This Girl Can campaign since 2015, and we had Tess Agnew, who's also on the call today, who was our first ambassador. Hi Tess. And we worked with Tess on several videos and campaigns, but in the beginning of 2021 we decided to launch a network and really use it as a mechanism to inspire more women and girls to move more, and to help break down the barriers that prevent many from being physically active. So through the network, we want to encourage individuals and organisations to shout about the amazing opportunities that are available in Sussex. We've recruited another ambassador, which is Zoe, who's also on the call today, and 20+ champions, and we've got a new champion that will be onboarding in the next few months. And the champions ambassadors are there to focus on the importance of hearing directly from women with different abilities, interests and personal incentives to why they are active and how they fit it into their lives. So following on from the 3 sessions we delivered last year, which you can watch back, and the details and links to those videos are on our website. And this event will focus on how to keep women engaged in sport throughout their lives. So a bit of purpose to this. Research has consistently proven that women are less active than men, and that women's participation decreases with age. Sport England's Active Live survey suggested that more than 13.9 million women are not active enough. The new report from Sports Marketing Surveys explores how sport can better appeal to and support women to enjoy a more fulfilling, longer sports participation journey, irrespective of their background, circumstances or performance level. So sport really needs to reframe the value it can bring to women throughout their lives. And by doing this, we collectively help to build upon Sport England's Uniting the Movement ambitions for 2025, such as ensuring inclusive, safe and accessible experiences are standard, and adopting a people's changing needs and expectations. So we hope from this session, by focusing on the report's key findings, hearing from our champions and ambassadors, and discussing your own experiences and observations. Sorry, my cat's just jumped. We can start to undertake preventative actions, re-engage with lapsed participants and retain those who are already active. So I've just put some outcomes that hopefully attendees to today will go away with. So have a better understanding of women's sporting journeys. Take away two key insights on how to keep women engaged, and learn from real women's experiences to feel empowered to share your own or observations of others and to influence. And you feel motivated and confident to implement the actions of change in planning and delivery models to engage and retain women. So without further ado, I'm really delighted to hand over to Hannah to introduce herself.
Well, thank you, Gemma. Let me just share my screen. Okay. Excellent. Can everyone see my first slide? Thank you, Gemma. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much to Gemma, and thank you for the team at Active Sussex for inviting me along to your forum. I'm really excited to share our piece of research that we did. It was back in the second half of last year. So the company I work for is called Sports Marketing Surveys. We're based in neighbouring Surrey, so not too far away. But we're a very small kind of sports specialist research agency working with different organisations from kind of big NGBs but down to smaller charities, and looking at providing them with research and insight that will help them bring about the changes within their communities. And one of the areas we wanted to focus on was women's sport and how we could help inspire more women to stay engaged in sport. So that's kind of what led to the research. And as I said, we did it it was in field kind of last summer. We had about 13 NGBs who helped promote a survey. We had over 5,000 people complete it about half men, half women. And we kind of looked at their motivations, their barriers for taking part in sport throughout all their life stages. So from teenage years through adulthood and into later adulthood. And the aim of the research was kind of to work out, are there any kind of key trends or insights that can be kind of applied at grassroots level. So what we kind of found with the research, so I suppose following on from what Gemma mentioned in terms of the data that we already know that's around. So we know the situation, we know women are less active than men and their activity levels decline with age. So what we found in this piece of research was actually that 48% of women would take a break from their sport at some point in their sporting journey. So that could be at age of 18, it could be in their 30s, it could be 40s, 50s, but at some point in their sporting journey, about half of women will take a break. And then if we look at the number of women who are regularly engaged in sport and apply that percentage, it turns out that could be potentially about 8.3 million women are likely to take a break at some point. So what we found, and I suppose what the message that came out of our research was that based on that number, that 8.3 million and 48%, was that our kind of rallying call was that as sports organisers, deliverers, coaches, those engaged in that aspect, if we can help more women turn, I wish I'd returned sooner into a came back as soon as I was ready, then we can help more women remain engaged in sport for longer. So our research is saying that it's inevitable, it's going to happen, but what can we do to support more women to remain engaged in sport for longer? So the presentation I'm going to share will share some kind of key findings around what we found around that element. We'll look at some real life journeys, and then we'll have some actions for change at the end. So I'm hoping that, as Gemma said, my ambition is that everyone leaves with 2 of those actions that they feel they can implement either in their setting or as a coach or whatever your role is. My aim is to help inspire you to take two points away to implement. So we're going to begin the session. We've got, as Gemma said, we've got the This Girl Can ambassadors, and I was lucky to be introduced to some of them and found out their really interesting stories and experiences. So we've got 3 in total through the session. And we're going to start with Marie, who is on the call. We've seen her. So welcome, Marie. If you could take yourself over.
Hello. Thank you.
Excellent. So we're just going to have a quick chat around your sporting journey, Marie. So I just wondered if you could share with everyone kind of your sport is running. So I wondered if you can share with us how you kind of got started and why you were motivated to start running.
It feels funny as even now saying my sport is running. So but I got into running in my 40s actually, so quite late, and I was really motivated by the health reasons really. I suddenly had aches and pains daily. I'd get out of bed in the morning and ache, and realised that I had to make some lifestyle changes. There were people around me that were getting sick, and several of my close friends had cancer, and I know running's not going to cure that, but I knew I needed to do something. So kind of a trigger for that was I did a walk. I walked a marathon for Macmillan because the Macmillan nurse had been amazing for my dad, who'd also become unwell, so I wanted to give something back. And then after training, realised that I couldn't really kind of keep up that kind of walking. I loved it, and I loved how it made me feel. And I started losing weight during that journey. So I lost 4.5 stone in the end during kind of that journey, and then realized that, you know, couldn't do that. So, hey, I'll just start running. That'll be, you know, that's just quicker walking, isn't it? And so it kind of went from a walking to I need to fit something into my life that makes me feel this great. What can I do that's quick? I've got a busy lifestyle. What can I do that's quick? So that's kind of where, but I guess the main motivation was just my health and seeing those around me becoming unwell.
Mm. And what, if any, barriers did you find you faced in, I suppose, moving from walking to running?
I guess the biggest barrier was in my head. You know, not. And that was me thinking I didn't look like a runner. As I said, I was 4.5 stone heavier than I am now. So I felt that I didn't look like a runner. Couldn't get sports clothing that I felt comfortable in. Everything felt tight. So, you know, and wearing extra large, you know, men's T-shirts to kind of cover myself because I didn't want anyone to see me. With people not seeing me, I was running at 4:30 in the morning when it was dark, so people didn't see me. I used to get up ridiculously early and just do that and run in the dark. So a lot of that I know was, now when I see people, I know a lot of that was in my head. So I think that's, for me, was the biggest battle. But also I had people making comments, you know, look at the fat girl, that kind of thing, which is never good. And, you know, it's heartbreaking. And I know now that that's about them, not me. I would see people in the gym and they didn't look sweaty. They looked fabulous in their sports outfits and didn't look sweaty at all. And I now realise I sweat because I work flipping hard at what I'm doing. So, you know, I don't have a gym membership because I feel the health benefits for me are outside. That's part of what I do. And, you know, so I think a lot of the barriers, and I didn't really also feel I had anyone to talk to about running, because a lot of people in my age, their life seemed to be too busy and they weren't getting active and running and those kind of things. So I found an online running group on Facebook who were just so supportive, you know. And when I said I'd been shouted at and called the fat girl, or when I was struggling with, you know, finding comfortable active wear, they were brilliant. They supported that journey and cheered every achievement that I did. So they were brilliant.
Excellent. And has your motivation or your main drivers to be active now changed? So from those that got you going originally, are they the same now, or have they changed?
I think a lot of them, they are. They are very much the same. I mean, I run for me. I don't run for anybody else. I don't enter races. I don't do any of those things because it's all about me and what I get from it. I run now for my health, but I also run and for my mental health. Without a doubt, in the last 2 years, I would not have got through the last 2 years if I didn't have running. And people around me will know if I haven't been out for a run that day, because I'm just slightly less focused or a bit stroppy. So I think, you know, the motivations around health have stayed the same, but I think I challenge myself more through it. So I'm kind of more motivated, but those challenges are around me. So, you know, I quite often do, at least once a year, we'll do something where I raise money for a charity. I now do try new things. So it isn't just the running for me. I do dance classes, and I've now got a kayak. So I'm going to try kayaking this year. And, you know, I think it's all about kind of, I love the feeling that I get from being active and the running and everything else. I'm just wondering if I can get it from other things too. So really keen to try other things and different experiences. So I've never entered a race. So I've applied for several this year. So I'm hoping, I love running in London. So whenever I'm in London, I go off for a trot round and wherever I am in London. So I'm hoping that one of my races I've applied for in London this year I get into. So watch this space. You could be seeing me swearing a lot, trying to do a marathon or a half marathon training, which is not my distance at all. So I think drivers are slightly different, but definitely the health and the mental health are my key drivers for it.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story.
Problem.
It's been so interesting, and the best of luck. I hope you get to do some races. Or maybe just one, but this year. Yeah.
Thank you.
Best of luck. Cool. Thank you, Marie.
Thank you.
Lovely. Okay. So we're going to move on and just touch on some of the key findings from the research. So we're just going to go through three key findings that we found, but obviously there are a lot more in the full report, which can be downloaded for free from our website, sportsmarketingsurveys.com. You navigate to the research store. You do have to go through kind of like a checkout process, but it's free to download. So if anyone wishes to read the full report, please do. But we're going to crack on with the findings, and we're going to do a bit of an interactive quiz element. So the first question for everyone, so hopefully you can see the poll on your screens, is who is more likely to take a break from their sport, female team or female individual sports participants? So hopefully if you should all be able to vote on the poll. So there is also an option if you feel there is no difference between the different sports types. So these were women who said their main sport was either a team sport or an individual sport. And there were kind of women who were, I suppose, fairly kind of engaged in their sport. Cool. Excellent. So results. So we've got 61% say individual sports participants and 33% say team. Cool. So let me navigate to the next slide. So in our research, so this is just our research, and with our panel, we actually found the opposite. So we found that actually, if we look at the green pie charts, so we found that actually within team sports, 59% took at least one break, and within individual sports, 39% took one break. So I suppose slightly against the assumption that actually, I suppose, I'm guessing most people chose individual sports because if you're on your own, you haven't got that camaraderie behind you, and it's easier to stop without letting others down. But actually, within our research, it was team sports. And I think the reason behind that is if we look at the blue charts above, is actually when we look at when they started the sport. So we can see a lot of people started team sports earlier. So 66% started when they were in childhood. Whereas within individual sports, those are starting, nearly half of them were starting in middle age adulthood, which is about 18 to 35 years, which is what we categorize in this research. So the likelihood is that the reason why in our research we found that team sports have a larger break is because people are starting them earlier. So they've got a longer time period to eventually take a break. Whereas those who are starting in later life, they're tending to start an individual sport. And actually those who do start then are less likely to take a break from their sport after starting in kind of later life. Okay, next question. So during which life stage was meeting new people most important to women? So we've got 4 life stages. So we've got adolescence, 13 to 17, young adulthood, 18 to 35, middle adulthood, 36 to 55, and then older adulthood, 56 to 65. So which life stage, so for women in particular, was meeting new people the most important reason for participating in their sport? Cool. A couple more to go, almost there. Marvelous. Okay, so results. So we've got 50% think it's that middle adulthood, so 36 to 55, and then kind of fairly even split between the other two life stages. So what we found was that actually it was the 18 to 35 where we saw the biggest spike. So on this graph, if you were to look at it's this kind of lime green is to meet new people for women, spikes at 18 to 35. And it's actually quite a big jump from adolescence going up to, I suppose, was that just under maybe 37%, then up to actually over 60, so it's maybe at 62, 63%. So a massive change there in motivations for women. And we did see that kind of among men of a similar spike. So if we see the kind of stronger blue, again, there is a jump there as well, but not quite as steep as what we saw in women. And then the other interesting thing around this, around the social factors, was actually if we look at the light green for women, which is spending time with friends and family, we can see that was also important during that young adulthood. But interestingly for that one is that one did actually almost plateau and stay very important for about 60% of the women in our sample. Whereas maybe the meeting new people did drop off for women, and it turned into kind of spending that quality time with close friends and families was one of the key motivators for driving their participation. Okay, one last question. So this one is a true or false one. So true or false, confidence was a bigger barrier for female occasional participants than regular participants. So when we're saying occasional, we mean in those people who took part at least once every few weeks, and regular, those who have taken part weekly. So true or false, confidence was a bigger barrier for female occasional participants than regular. Cool, nice and quick on this one. Just a couple more to go. Cool. Excellent. Oh, a landslide. So 100% everyone thinks that actually this is true. So what we found in our research, there it is, was actually what we found was actually we weren't able to prove or disprove this point or this assumption. So actually we can see that, so on this chart we've got two confidence type statements. So my confidence to take part and also fear of being judged or not being good enough. I mean, the green are the occasional participants and the blue are the regular participants. So one definite trend that we can see is that confidence as a barrier is highest amongst those in adolescence and does decline with age, but doesn't disappear completely. It's always there. But what we can also see is actually there's no clear trend or evidence to say that occasional or regular participants were more affected than the other. You can see they kind of swap over in terms of their order. Actually, what we found was that all women, irrespective of how frequently they participated, also, you know, their performance level, their kind of experience, how long they were participating for, irrespective of all that, all women at some point faced barriers around confidence, which impacted their participation in their sport. Okay. So those are kind of a whistle-stop tour. As I said, there is more findings in the report for everyone to have a look at your leisure after the session. And if anyone has any questions at any point, please do drop me an email. I'm happy to answer any extra questions on any of the data. So what we're going to do now is we are just going to share another Sporting Journeys story. This is with one of our ambassadors, Holly. She could be with us today because she is a teacher. So we caught up last week during half term in between her childcare. But she shared with us both her journey in her sport, but also she's a coach as well. So she shared with us her, I suppose, what she's seen, what she's observed through her coaching role as well around women and girls participation.
I started rugby a little later than normal because I started in my mid-20s after I had my first child when I met a new partner, and he was a rugby player, and I fell in love with it straight away because it was a great bunch of girls. Like from the moment I stepped on the pitch with them for training, they were so welcoming. Before that, I hadn't really done much sport. When I had been playing for a couple of years, I had my first break from rugby because I had my first break from rugby. I broke my ankle through and through and couldn't play for 6 months. So I decided to take up photography, specifically sports photography, taking photos of rugby. And to keep myself involved, I'd go down and I'd take photos of all the games. I've also had my second pregnancy since I've started playing, and postpartum there as well. So you can't play rugby for 6 months again because of the trauma that's involved in the contact and the trauma that's involved in childbirth. The girls of my team, the women are just so aware and would message, check in how I was. All were really excited about the baby. For me, being part of a team and it being a team sport meant that it didn't really matter my circumstances or what was going on. There was always a place for me at rugby. I mean, if I don't turn up to the gym, no one questions that. No one's asking after me. If I don't turn up to training and I haven't told anyone, there's someone always to ask, is everything okay? Is something going on? Do you need any help with anything? The gym doesn't text you when you say you've tested positive to see if you want goodies brought around your house and things like that. And I think, especially as a woman, and we do go through different things to men, like childbirth, pregnancy, God, even our periods that keep happening, is having a team of women who go through the same stuff or similar things, or who might one day go through that. You get quite a family bond of everyone pitches in and looks after each other. I teach high school and I coach under 13s, under 15s or under 18s girls rugby, depending on what season it is and what I fancy doing that time. Teenagers are less confident. They've got a lot of anxieties. There's a lot of social pressure. They get this, hour and a half, 2 hours, once or twice a week where they can really let loose. They've got a group of people, again, that are like-minded to them. They all want to muck around. They all want to get physical. And they can get rid of some of that energy. I think as girls, we're conditioned far too early to not be competitive, to not be aggressive, to not be physical. So sometimes we have to train them out of that a bit. But actually, when it comes to, I'm really stressed because I've got exams coming up, there is nothing better than going in full pelt for a tackle against someone, because all of that adrenaline, all of the endorphins are going to take some of that anxiety and stress away. So for me, I teach in a school local to my rugby club as well. So I see girls from the rugby club in their school setting. And what I find really interesting about the girls in the game is that they don't actually hang out together at school. So they'll be playing together at rugby and they'll be best mates at rugby, but in school they all have their separate groups, they go their separate ways, they don't interact that much. And it's not a shade, it's not that they don't want to spend time together, but it almost protects those relationships at rugby. So when things go a bit wrong with their friendship group at school, outside of it, they've still got that like safe space, and they have those bonds that are just completely different. The social dynamics in a school setting I find are very stressful, very political and quite fraught, because you spend most of your time together. Whereas at rugby, I think it's a bit more freeing for them, and it's a space for them to sort of connect together with that shared interest of rugby and actually be completely separate from the school world. And I've noticed with the girls I coach compared to, say, some of the girls I teach, that actually they're not just accepting of their physical selves, they're really proud of it. They're not worrying necessarily about just what they look like. They're worrying about how powerful their body can be. When you get to the under 18s year group and we've got girls starting at the gym, they're not doing that to lose weight. They're doing that to, put a bit of weight on, to get stronger, to get faster, to get fitter, and to perform better rather than to look better. And I think once we all actually stop worrying about how our body looks and more about what our body does, you find you actually love how your body looks, because you're like, my God, I just did that today. For me, I think, especially when I think about the women on my team, we have 3 teams at Hove of all different women. And when we have the girls, not just the girls in the girls section that are already teenagers, but all of the girls that are in the mini section, when they turn up and they see these women arriving for their games, all focused on performing, all different shapes and sizes yet again, but all different personality types, I think that they see that there's someone in that setup that they can be.
Cool. So that was our catch up with Holly, and I think when we look at all the women who took part in the research, who shared their sporting journey, and also as demonstrated by Marie and Holly, I think what we can see is that no 2 women's sporting journeys are the same. Everyone's unique, everyone goes through different experiences, and that kind of leads on to we've got kind of 2 key takeaways, and the first of our kind of key takeaways is around that. So what we are recommending from our research is that actually we need to help normalise and embrace squiggly sporting journeys. And by squiggly, we mean kind of not a linear journey. So it's not like at school, you start in the netball team and then you carry on, that's your sport kind of for life. Different women kind of can do different sports at different times. And also they can be interrupted, they can stop, start, come back at different points. So really it's around kind of how can we help make that the norm rather than challenge the kind of and challenge the existing stereotype of that kind of linear journey. Because what we found in our research was that we asked women to predict what they thought their what their participation will do in later life stages. So actually more than a quarter of women predicted that their participation will decrease after age 35. And then when we look at that alongside the active lives data that we spoke about at the start, in that, you know, women's physical activity does actually decrease, what we were seeing was that actually, in a way, society's expectation and acceptance that participation will decrease was in a way becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy. So we were kind of accepting and expecting that it will decrease, and then quite happy to accept that it did. But what we'd like to do is, if we can change that mindset around both women, but also those who deliver the sport, and, you know, male allies as well, we can change that mindset that actually that it kind of normalizes and embraces squiggly different sporting journeys. And if we can help shift that mindset, then we can help more women remain engaged in sport for longer. And then our second key takeaway was about how we frame sport as a tool. So I think everyone knows that the evidence and research is out there to say that sport and physical activity participation helps improve physical and mental health, which is true. But what we actually found in our research was that sport could do so much more as well. It had such wider, deeper, life-enhancing benefits to women. And a lot of women in our research said that actually they were life-changing for them. And these are the things that also gave them that sense of belonging to their sport. So we've got a quote here from one of the respondents in the survey that actually said that their sport gave them so much in life. So they've got teamwork, commitment, you know, how to win and lose with humility and pride, how to come back in defeat, such, you know, key skills to take you through all different ups and downs in work, in life. And sport can help women to develop those, I suppose, that resilience, but also those skills and benefits. And then linked with that, we also found in our research, when we looked at those who took a break and those who continuously participated, we looked at what their original reasons were for when they first started sport and physical activity. So if we look at the two central rings on our research, so these were motivations that I suppose are beyond the obvious to improve my physical health, but it's those wider benefits. So these two were to improve well-being and also to meet new people. So we found when people had these, I suppose, links with the wider benefits, they were actually more likely to continuously participate. So we can see to improve well-being, 62% continuously participated, and to meet new people, 56% continuously participated. And if we look on the far left, the average across all of the motivations was actually 43%. So what we saw was actually those women who had that connection with the wider benefits, the valuable kind of tools for well-being, if they had that connection from the beginning, they actually were more likely to continuously participate in their sport. So if we can help more women to develop those kind of links with those benefits, then hopefully that would help more women to remain engaged with sport for longer. So those are the kind of whistle-stop tour of the key findings and the key takeaways. We're now going to move on to talking about the actions for change. I'm going to welcome one of our other ambassadors to have a kind of brief discussion with me. So I want to welcome Tess, who I can see on screen. So Tess, if you want to unmute yourself, that would be lovely. So Tess and I are just going to have a quick chat around a couple of things. There are just some aspects that kind of came out from Tess's journey and experience and observations around how that we can, the importance around accessibility and habits. So hi Tess. Excellent. So what we wanted to chat is, from your experiences, what have you seen have been the key elements that would make sport accessible for women?
Yeah, so I've got like three sort of views on this. So one is my own as a participant, and one is as a ride leader for Breeze, which is a British cycling initiative to get more women on bikes. And then the other is doing bike clubs for girls at secondary schools with bus gangs. So I've got kind of 3 views. And in terms of my own, seeing bodies like mine doing things that I could potentially do always helps. So representation is a massive, massive thing. That kind of idea of if she can do it, I can do it. I think that's really powerful. It's really empowering to see someone like you doing something. And then once you have a go, you kind of realize that actually, oh, maybe I can do it. I can carry on. I think that kind of runs through to all of the different groups that I work with as well. So with Breeze, for example, we have a lot of women who turn up with all sorts of bikes. They've got baskets on the front. They've got, they're not in lycra. They turn up in massive coats and things because it's cold, and that, you know, they're worried about, are they going to be cold? How windy is it going to be? Is it going to rain? All this kind of stuff. We need to just kind of get away from the sport and performance sort of element of it all, and just kind of break down those barriers and show women that you can just turn up and have a go. And I think when in terms of cycling, if you take away that kind of lycra clad racing sort of element and make it just about riding your bike, so riding your bike to work, getting around on foot, having a walk to work, you know, taking the bus and then getting off a couple of stops early, just putting movement into every day rather than it being so kind of, what's the word, like forced about performance stuff. I think also if you break down the word accessible, you've got access, so you need to feel like you belong and it's something you could belong to, like Holly was saying. And then capable is the other part of that word. So if I feel capable to do something, then I can do it. And I think from activity providers' point of views, just really supporting the beginners on those journeys when they do come in and they start from later life, and just making that really inclusive and judgment-free environment for them so that they can feel supported and so that they don't kind of come along and don't feel like they have a big hug of people around them trying to do it. If you've ever been to an exercise class and the trainer comes straight up to you, hi Tess, you know, how are you? Right, this is what we're doing. Yeah, don't worry about it. Absolutely fine. You know, and if they're kind of there with you the whole time and you've got people laughing and joking around you, then you feel like it's, you know, lifts you up. It makes you feel supported in that journey and you're not on your own. So I think that's really important.
Because you did a series of trials, didn't you, of different sports?
Yeah, I love doing all sorts of different things. Like, when Marie was saying that she can she get the feeling she gets from running from anything else? You absolutely can. And yeah, just give everything a go. I think it's brilliant. I love being a beginner. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the pillars of well-being, you've got like the intellectual and learning, you've got connection, and you've got physical and mental, and sport can hit all of those elements as well. So I think those are the intrinsic goals that you were talking about in your report. So a lot of us start our journeys with that kind of, I need to lose weight, I need to look like this, I need to fit into a size 10 clothes, I need to stop people calling me fat when I'm running, all this kind of stuff. But once you get into it and you kind of get over those barriers to get into it, none of that matters. Like literally none of it matters, and it's all about how you feel, and then you chase that feeling. And then once you're chasing the feeling, it's always going to be a habit. So when life takes over, you do have a dip, you know that to feel good about yourself and about life again, you just need to get moving again. So it's kind of like you say, changing that mindset from that sort of performance-based to kind of well-being.
And I think that's what's really interesting in our research. We found that actually, again, go back to that word squiggly, in terms of the motivations were really squiggly. So like both you and Marie touched on it, in terms of there was a motivation to get into a sport at the beginning, but actually that motivation changed. And as with age, but also with life experiences, things change how we look at, you know, our health and how we spend our time. And I think a really key takeaway is for, like you said, providers to take away that ability to, I suppose, adapt and be flexible with women's changing motivations and kind of needs from sport and physical activity.
Yeah, definitely.
And then, no, you go.
I just think also just kind of putting stuff out there about those insecurities and feelings and stuff that people have as well. So in your marketing materials, do some like video, like interviews and things with women who, to kind of get that feeling out there a little bit more, so that people can see, oh, she's like me and she feels like that too, so I can join in.
Definitely. And then thinking about once we've got people engaged in sport, have you seen any good examples of how we can help embed sport and so it can become a habit for women and kind of really embed it in their daily lives?
I think for me, the main thing for me to embed things into daily life is cycling as a mode of transport. So that's like one example. So again, incorporating kind of daily movement into everything rather than it being I must go to this exercise class. So, and also just general kind of making it into a community thing as well. So like if you look at Parkrun, that's a weekly thing. It's every week. It happens when rain, wind, shine, whatever's happening, it's always there. There's always a community there. And you know, it's kind of a routine. So I think if you can put things into your diary that's kind of every week, you kind of know that you're going to do that with people as well. I think joining other people to do things keeps you there. Tonight I'm doing some chain gang training around Preston Park Velodrome, and you need a certain amount of people to do it. Otherwise, it just doesn't work. You're just riding around in two. So I know that I'll go even if I can't be bothered, and they know they'll go even if they can't be bothered. And I think you kind of community is really, really important, and that's one of the things that keeps me moving. It's not really about getting fit anymore. I love the feeling of getting fit and I love learning new stuff, but it's about just hanging out with my mates and just having fun, really, and then getting the endorphins afterwards. So I think as women, we should look for those communities and those opportunities to kind of get involved, and team sports are a really good one as well if you have the time and stuff to commit. I think one of the downsides of team sports is that there's a lot of commitment to it. So I think if there are a few more like drop-in sessions and stuff like that for sports that don't involve being, you know, like almost like a midway point of being part of a team, I think that would help those women who want to kind of drop in a little bit more.
Yeah, I suppose it's for sports or settings to think outside the box. How can they create that community feel without having the traditional team setting where you pay your membership fee and you come every single week or play a league game every single week? It's thinking innovatively, how can they create that feeling of a community without those elements?
Well, that's just kind of like comms and stuff, isn't it? So sending emails to everybody, keeping everyone updated, having social media, things like that, doing events like on and offline, and just having socials and things like that. So it's not all about the sport and the activity that you're doing. Going to parkrun, having a coffee afterwards, all that kind of stuff kind of builds into the community.
Definitely, yeah. Fabulous. Cool. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences and your thoughts, Tess. It's been really useful. Marvellous. Cool. So we're just going to move on just to look at some of the actions for change. So these are ones that kind of came out of the research, some of our recommended things that coaches, settings, clubs could do to help encourage more women to remain engaged in sport for longer. So the first one is around kind of preventative action. So it's about doing the groundwork early to reduce that break length. So it builds on that, the finding that, you know, half of women are likely to take a break, but how can we have those breaks to either be fewer or shorter? So first one is around celebrating women who return. So just like Tess was saying, you know, it's so important for women to see other women like them. So it's important to kind of raise that profile of women who are returning to that sport, whether that's after maternity break, after an injury break, career change, or just because they wanted to do a different sport. But if we can help celebrate those women and increase that role model visibility, it will help more people to know that they can take a break. So one example I saw was of Cambridge City Hockey Club. It was their Instagram account. It was during lockdown. They did 365 posts daily, and each of their posts focused on a different member of their club, and they alternated male and female. But what they did was they actually celebrated those individuals' achievements on the pitch, but importantly off the pitch. So if they've done something important, whether that was in their studies or maybe like Marie, they'd done a marathon or something around that, but something that celebrated their successes as a woman and also as men. But it just helped to grow the visibility of role models within the club. they're a high performing team club with high level coaches and players, but they also have grassroots participants as well. So by making sure they covered everyone, they were promoting role models for all different women across the club. And then the second one was around creating a supportive environment. So the key elements women in our research said that they wanted from the environment was a compassionate, non-judgmental and inclusive environment. And if we can have that environment almost as a standard, that's what the environment's like, it will help women to realise that actually when they do go for a break, they know that they'll be able to come back because they know the type of environment that's waiting for them, that's there for them, and they know that it will meet their needs. So if we can help create more supportive environments, hopefully more women, when they do take their break, know they can come back sooner. And then our third one is around planning to stay connected. So this is linked with what Holly had the same experience. So she said, obviously, when she was on, I can't remember if it was maternity or when she had her injury, but she took up photography. So she was still involved in the club activities, but with a different hat on. So she still had that sense of connection, that sense of belonging to her club, even though she couldn't participate. So this is around encouraging clubs to plan ahead, or if someone does have an injury, get things in place early so that those women can stay connected, therefore knowing that when they're ready, they know they can come back because they're a valued member of the team, whether they're playing or not playing. The second set of actions are around re-engaging those women who have taken a break. So again, based on the findings, we know that, sport can have a valuable role in improving people's health. But actually, when we talked to women about the reasons why they returned, it was actually the reasons beyond that that helped encourage them to return. So what we found was actually we need to help reignite women's passion for sport. So whether that's by building on kind of nostalgia links back to their childhood, or using high-performing teams to kind of inspire them to return, whether that's the Olympics or a big national world championships for a sport. We even had one lady in our research, she used to do archery when she was younger, and she had started a family, had 2 children, and actually she was watching the Hunger Games, and that's what sparked her to try go back to archery. So she looked up her local club. Off the back of that, she signed herself and her daughter up for a taster session, and in the end they actually became club members. She joined the committee. Now her kids are kind of flown the nest, but her and her husband still go, and they practice archery as their kind of physical activity. But that all stemmed from her being inspired by watching the Hunger Games on TV. So it's about thinking outside the box and how we can inspire women to come back to sport. Second one is around showcasing that sport is for people like them. So a bit exactly like Tess was saying about the women with their bikes and their baskets and their big jackets and their jumpers. You picture that, and that's completely opposite to what you would picture from, if you think cycling, Olympic cyclists, you picture, or especially around Surrey, you picture the mammals, the men in lycra who are ploughing up, Box Hill or wherever. But actually, as I said, if we can showcase that, yes, that is one element of the sport, but actually women who just want to, jump on their bike that's been in the garage for like 10 years, but still works, they can still be a cyclist and they can still do that sport. And it's about showcasing with the imagery and the marketing that sport is for people of all ages, all abilities. You don't have to be as fit as you were when you first took your break. Sport is there for everyone. And then linked with that is linked with our marketing, and it's around that messaging that we choose to use. So what we wanted to encourage was for organisations to be deliberately targeted with their marketing, whether they pick, it's exactly like Marie and both Tess were saying, they were doing sports because they wanted to try something new, to challenge themselves. There's no reason to just pick that as your marketing message and promote that out to women within your target audience. You might not get hundreds of people coming along, you might only get 2 or 3, but if they really resonate with that message and build that deep, authentic link with your sport through that motivation, they're more likely to remain engaged in that sport. So I suppose we wanted to try and encourage settings to maybe pick a couple of motivations and really try and demonstrate how your sport can help women to gain that benefit, and hopefully you'll get, in terms of return, it will be the quality over quantity. And then our third set of actions are around retention. So how we can develop and nurture that long-lasting sporting journey. So within our research, we found that injury was the second most common reason why women stopped participating, and a third of women, 17% of women who took a break actually took a break because of injury. So how can we, as a sports sector, but also as sports deliverers, how can we support all women to, I suppose, maintain their ability, their capability to continuously participate in their sport? So whether that's anything around injury prevention or injury treatment, how are we supporting? It might just be signposting or general advice or tips, or if you're delivering something, everyone always forgets the stretching bit at the end, but are we remembering to promote that to women? Because actually, if we don't do it when we're younger and participating, then our participation is going to tail off in later life. So there is a responsibility around those who are delivering sport to juniors and even, young adulthood women. We have a responsibility to help women to empower themselves to maintain their ability to participate in sport for longer. And then our final recommendation was around enjoyment. So when we looked at all of the reasons for returning, for motivating throughout their sport, enjoyment was the key reason for around about 90% of women. That was why they participated in their sport. But what we need to encourage is actually for sports to look at what enjoyment means for women at different stages in their lives. And I think talking to Tess, Holly and Marie, we can see that those motivations and what they're looking for from that sport changes. So it might have been performance when they were younger, but actually in later life stages, it shifts more to recreation. But a lot of women in our research did say that actually they lost their enjoyment for their sport because their sport didn't really cater for their recreational enjoyment. It's still focused on participation, whether that was because when they went along to sessions, they had to train with the juniors who were like under 16s and they were all focusing on participation. But they were there, they've been there, they've done that, they've moved on, and they're actually there for the fun and the enjoyment. But those two things were kind of clashing because they were not really offering them the chance to really satisfy their enjoyment of being there with their friends and family, going for a coffee afterwards, because they were kind of training with a bunch of kids. So it's thinking about how, as sports providers, you're helping to meet the kind of enjoyment needs of women all through their life stages. And I'm going to finish with an example of this in action. Let me just pause that. So this is an example of from England Netball, who have, this is their Back to Netball video. And I want you to almost treat it as a bingo card. So all the things that we've just seen throughout our research, but also talking to our ambassadors, I want you to see if you can spot if they've picked up on and are highlighting any of those different motivations within their video.
Back to netball for me is where we giggle more than we pass the ball.
Back to netball is completely fulfilling.
I have made so many new friends.
Back to Netball is a programme that we run as England Netball to make it easy for ladies to come back to netball, or people that haven't played netball before. It's a really fun, light-hearted way of them returning to the sport.
My favourite thing about Back to Netball is that it's really children relaxed. We still play a great game, following the rules, but also just having fun and making sure that we're having a really good workout while we're laughing, we're giggling and pushing ourselves all at the same time.
My role's mainly to instigate the practices that we do. I set up the session to make sure that the activities that we do are fun and that they have that sort of ethos that it brings the laughter, that they can have a bit of silliness.
The girls here are lovely and Lou is such a good coach. She's so funny and she just makes it fun for everybody.
So Louise is our Back to Netball coach. She's wonderful at going through the instructions so that we feel like we're getting better each week. We're pushing ourselves, we're learning different skills, but at the same time it's very children relaxed and we can just have fun along the way.
I mean, the Back to Netball family is really, really good.
I laugh from 6 till 7. I love the fact that it's mixed abilities. So I'm not very good, I never have been, but I don't care, and we just have a go.
It gives us the chance to come back to netball. People that have been out for a long time can then come back and return to playing the game. It's a great way of us all sticking together and having a laugh with all of us girls. And then also just having a bit of time to get away from work, getting away from everything else that's going on in the week, and just be able to clear our minds and have some fun.
It's just been good for me to get out. I've got grandchildren, grandchildren. I look after my mum, I'm a carer. When I'm here at the Back to Netball session, I really don't think about anything else. You know, everyone's got things in their life that are going on, but they come to court and it's almost for that whole hour they just switch off. It's, you know, and they're giggling and laughing, and it is just a complete escape from whatever's going on elsewhere.
I think there's a lot of apprehension before people start about, you know, oh, I've never played, I haven't played for 10 years, I haven't played for 20 years. I was so nervous, but she just makes it so natural and so welcoming and so much fun.
A common worry that ladies have is, am I fit enough? Do I have enough experience? That's my responsibility to make sure that I can cater that session to everyone. You don't need to bring anything to Back to Netball, just a pair of trainers, a drink of water. The coach will have all the equipment you need and will guide you through the session.
Okay, hopefully you managed to tick off loads of things on your virtual bingo card there. But I think what was clear from that video and what England Netball really worked on is the environment that they create for the women who come along to their sessions. They make it inclusive by making it fun. They put things in place to, I suppose, allay any apprehensions that the women had. But also in that video, I think you could see a lot of those motivations came out that we touched on in our report in terms of women going along just to have fun, but also they still wanted to play the sport. There was a lady in there who said, you know, we play by all the normal rules, but the coach was there to instigate the drills and the games for them to participate. And what was very interesting is I did catch up with one of the team from England Netball because they were part of our study and they got their netball specific data, and over most of the sports we found that actually competition, the desire to compete actually declined across all women, but when they looked at specifically just the netball data, actually that motivation to compete was actually plateauing. So they found that actually a lot of the women still wanted to compete, but it was just the setting and the environment that they create was different to what they would have for their performance settings or their junior settings. And I think that video really demonstrates, you know, the good work that they've done there to create that and then market that to the women who they're targeting with their product. So I hope that inspired you, and I hope that you can take away a couple of actions back to your setting. But as I said, if anyone wants any more information on the research or to talk about any of the findings, please do reach out to me. My contact details are there, or also on LinkedIn.
What I'd like to just let you know about while you're doing the feedback is that we've got some trustee opportunities coming up soon. So our trustees are ambassadors and influencers and are committed to tackling inequalities and ensuring our system work prioritises barriers to participation. So some of the things that we've talked about today. So we are going to be recruiting for 4 new trustees, including the chair. The recruitment pack isn't quite out yet. It'll be out at the beginning of April, but we have got a date for our Meet the Trustees Q&A session, which will be virtual. So if you fancy finding out a bit more about the board and the trustee role, then you can sign up. We'll send a link for the booking form. But what we'd really like to do is try and get the message out and get the reach as far and wide that these opportunities are coming up. So please pass it on to your colleagues and the communities you work with. I'm now going to hand over quickly to Carrie, who's going to tell you a bit more about International Women's Day.
Hello. So International Women's Day is on Tuesday, 8th of March. The theme for this year is to break the bias, and collectively we can. So please help spread the word by posting a selfie on your social media. The sort of pose for this year's selfie is with your arms in a cross shape like that in front of your chest. And if you could post that, maybe sharing your own perspective on what breaking the bias means to you. You can see some examples and download other resources on the official website. So we can share that afterwards. Please make sure that you include our local hashtag, which is This Girl Can Sussex. and tag ourselves. So we are just Active Sussex, that's our handle on social media. Also, as part of this Saturday, 5th of March, the This Girl Can national campaign are teaming up with Parkrun for International Women's Day to help break the bias. So please help promote and encourage women to get along to their local parkrun. If you've got any questions about any of these things, you're welcome to contact me. I think my contact details will be on the final slide at the end. Thank you.
Thanks, Carrie. Yes, so thanks everyone, and thanks for holding on for the last couple of minutes. So that just leaves me to say a massive thank you for joining us today. Don't forget to sign up to the This Girl Can Sussex Network if you aren't already. If you're not sure, then obviously you can just drop us a line and we can double check. Get behind International Women's Day, break the bias, and make sure that you tag Active Sussex and This Girl Can Sussex tags. And I look forward to hopefully seeing you again at a future This Girl Can Sussex event. Thanks once again and have a lovely rest of the day.